And look who's on time. Look who's on time, good people. That's right, you and moi. Welcome back to the Inner Storyteller. Welcome back to your real life. And please consider subscribing to the channels. You know what I'm saying? Like the video. Please like the video. And man, we have a show and a half for you today. When I say we, I do have a very special guest. As I told you guys 2 days ago, it's a surprise special guest. And before we get into that, a little housekeeping. Please understand, good people, that if you are here, you are in for real conversations, okay, about natural law, religion, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. We talk about money, anarchy, culture, and how mankind is manipulated from the shadows by forces that do not have our best interests at heart, likely because they are completely evil. But we are not bashing faith systems here. We are not calling people stupid for having a religion. We are simply deeply examining the psychological affects and effects of the stories we have the most faith in, the ones we have the most stake in, and how those stories help shape society. And that examination, as you will see most definitely in this episode, must always sit right alongside an honest look at the current human condition, which is slavery. Government is slavery, good people. And the question we have to keep returning to is, what can actually be improved with a proper understanding of the inner storyteller and how it works? And if any of that makes you feel a little uneasy, a little angry, or uncomfortable in any way, please understand, understand, overstand that although you are encouraged to stay, like the video, subscribe, and everything, of course, you are also welcome to leave at any time. There is no need to get nasty in my comments. Although, feel free to get nasty with me, because I got time for it. And last thing, you can't leave unless you've liked the video. So if you have not yet clicked that like button, give me a thumbs up. Let me know you're here. And please help me welcome to the show, Mr. Auren
How you
Dragon
doing?
Na Fearne?
Fiorin. It's Gaelic. Yeah.
Fearin. I love it. I love it. I love the salute, by the way, back at you. What's happening, good brother?
Hey, man.
Auren,
Glad to be here, man. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
oh, absolutely, dude. Um, Auren makes fire content on TikTok. And if y'all been with this channel for a long time, you already know I personally am not on TikTok anymore. I have been super banned from TikTok. Let's go. I,
Hey.
I don't know if I told you when we were on the phone when we met the other day, but I've had 3 pages on TikTok. All 3 of them got, permanently kicked off. And then when I got it's the same. It was, how to say, my phone broke, but I got the same phone, but a new, a new phone of the same phone, and
Mhm.
just transferred all the data. When I got the new phone, it's like it was, and I tried to I downloaded all my apps and I tried to make the new TikTok page. It was like, nope, can't even. We're not even accepting your number anymore.
Yep.
And I wasn't even on the anarchy train again yet. I was still in conservative talking points land when I was just, but it was just such a thing, abortion, um, borders, uh, um, I was never a Trump supporter, but I was, just like family over teaching kids about sex at freaking third grade levels. You know, I was making sense, and I was apparently making too much sense. So TikTok kicked me the fuck off. It was like,
Hey, don't feel too
go
bad.
ahead.
I'm on account number 3 myself. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So okay, we have some stuff to talk about, good brother. Some of the things
I'm here
that
for it.
Yes, sir. Some of the things that I've heard you get into on your own channel have to do a great deal with the relationship between moral integrity and freedom. Moral
Yes.
integrity, as I define it in my work, is basically an individual or a group that is aligning their behavior patterns, their automatic responses to stimulus, with natural law, with the laws that govern the universal responses to the moral weight of our choices. Again, both collectively and individually. So, my first question to you, just to kind of get your brain going and warm up this conversation, is: in your view, what is the actual relationship between moral integrity and freedom? Can you have one without the other?
I think that's a great question. And I don't think there's an easy answer for it. I would say, however, that I don't believe that you can have one without the other. They are absolutely, codependent on on each other. Uh, and where our morals come from, I think is kind of, the argument that a lot of people are having
Hmm.
about this particular topic, whether those morals come from within the individual or whether those are outsourced to someone or something else like a government. I've watched a few of your videos and some of the lines that you talk about, especially with government being slavery. And in my TikTok content, I talk about how, relying on the government to dictate your morality is basically an abdication of the self.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I think that you definitely cannot have, freedom without, some form of moral compass. And I think one of the old speakers who has said it best was by the name of Epictetus, and he
Mm,
said, "No man is free who is not master of himself,"
yes.
which is super deep. But
Yeah.
yeah, the two are absolutely correlated. You cannot have one without the other, for sure.
Absolutely. I think that's a great quote too. The master, you are not free unless you are a master of yourself, because at least in groups, if we're together and we're having a good time, we're chilling, we have this sort of rhythm to our community, and then the community grows after a few, let's say a couple decades, the community gets bigger and bigger, and now we have teenagers, and we've been having such a good time that we forgot to pass down and like instill, program, if you will, ethically program moral integrity into our children, then
Hmm.
we may have a bunch of teenagers who engage in a lot of worldly and a lot of just ego boosting and thrill seeking behavior too much of the time,
Hmm.
right? Not where they kind of get it out their system once a year, but like way too much every day, if you will. And we see this pattern repeating itself over time, and this kind of tells us through natural, non conflated observation of nature, of human beings in nature, that without moral integrity, freedom declines. Because what happens when we have a bunch of teenagers acting up all the time every day is we have to enforce some moral standard of
Hmm.
some kind, and usually the sorcerer class, the manipulators of humankind, say, well, let's enact laws, right? Let's establish a group of people that we will give special costumes to, and we will call them government, and we will call them agencies, and we will call them organizations, and they will write down what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed to say, what you're allowed to think, what you're allowed to eat, what you're allowed to plant, and everything else, right?
Hmm.
And that will be our moral standard. And if you break the moral standard, then we'll kill you, or we'll throw you in a cage, like some sort of rabies rat, a rat with rabies in it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
call in animal
Uh,
control at that point.
and so I agree that obviously moral integrity of the individual as well as the groups within a given society, a given region of the world, is tied to freedom inseparably. So, if moral integrity is the prerequisite for a genuine freedom, what does it mean that the primary institutions shaping moral development in people's lives, this being public school, media, video game creators, social media influencers, and social media trends and things like that, um, If moral integrity is a prerequisite to genuine freedom, what does it mean that the primary institutions shaping moral development are specifically designed to disrupt morality and invert moral principles on the public? What does that mean for us in
I
your
think
view?
it. Oh boy, I think it means chaos, really, because I mean, if you think about it, morality in and of itself is kind of a broad spectrum, right? What is moral to one person or one group is, may or may not be considered moral to another group. Um, and if you really take the time to kind of, examine the things that are happening in this world, and you look at the various, groups like, the government, Hollywood, pop culture, like you said, gaming is a great one. There's such a wide array of these different moral values that are getting normalized in their different forms, art forms, whatever. And so I think that yeah, when you have so many different varied and conflicting moral groups that are just constantly attacking all of us on a day-to-day basis, it's chaos, it's confusion. You can't help but ask yourself, what is right and wrong, what is moral
Mm,
and whatnot. You can't really land, I think, on a specific set of standard moral values because they're all just so very different.
mm,
um, and I think that's kind of where a lot of like the argument, the debate, the nuance, all of that comes from, because that's kind of one of the, in my experience, especially on social media, that's really been one of the points of pushback that I receive, especially from people in my comments. Well, who gets to decide the moral baseline, right?
mm,
Who gets to be in charge of that?
mm.
Well, right now, we have a ton of different sources that we could consider, in charge of our moral values. And especially when we're young, I think for most people, we look to our parents for that guidance as far as, what's moral, what's right, what's wrong. We trust these people to
Right.
teach us those things because morality is learned. It's not something that you're just innately born with. The things that develop who you are and what shapes and forms your moral compass is absolutely learned behavior. And so, in your younger years, you're looking to the people who are older than you, your parents, your grandparents, the people who are in positions of authority, like your teachers when you're going through
Hmm.
school, and the government, obviously, to kind of like help shape that moral picture of what you think is right and wrong. So I
Right.
think right now it's absolute chaos because there really isn't a standard. We've tried to uh, enforce that in its various shapes and ways. Like with the government, it's the law that shapes our moral compass. But outside of that, there's so many different shapes that it takes. You don't really know what it's supposed to look like.
Right. And
Hmm.
that's a very good set of points that you bring up because there is something called natural law, which is
Hmm.
um, observable in reality. But as far as in the human mind and in the human spaces, there is no agreed upon standard, and the way that the world works is so organic and authentic and centered on the now versus the way far in the future, or being locked into the past. Nature is now, right? The further you
Hmm.
get from now, at least in nature, it's like the wake of a ship. Right at the back of the wake of the ship, you can see two lines of waves going in opposite directions very clearly. The further you get from that ship, they fade away. And in my work, the we kind of recognize that the wake of the ship can represent the now. The
Hmm.
two lines coming off of the ship represent the past and the future, right? Because now we are alive. And then we have prediction for potential, as far as mental imagination of the future. And a lot of times we can predict what's going to happen in the next 3 minutes, with some degree of accuracy, although a very incomplete picture. We can have some accuracy, and we can remember events that have occurred in our lives, or that we've seen, or that we've learned about and we didn't see, right? Things that happened hundreds of years ago that we've read so much material about and gotten so many stories about, that we have a somewhat kind of clear picture of how that influenced another thing that happened after it. And
Hmm.
what that means to me is that throughout our observations and throughout our experiments with morality, trying to come to a conclusion, what is true about morality is that it's twofold. There's a deterministic component, and there's a free will component to it. The
Hmm.
free will component dictates that, in my opinion and in my work, my philosophy dictates that you are free to take any action that you are able to take. You are free to take an action, right? I can take a life. I can take a jump off a cliff. I can take an invention and use it for what its purpose is, or use it in direct opposition to what it's designed to do. And God or the universe, whatever, is not going to interfere with my free will in that way, right? I can also kind of
Hmm.
construct thoughts in certain ways that are just, I can just choose to do so. At the same time, there are consequences, reactions, and responses to every action, every choice that's made. And that is a deterministic thing, because karma, somehow, some way, or whatever we call karma, that resonance that you feel with the moral weight of your choices, when you get your get back and the universe gets you back, and you can tell it's tied to that thing that you've been doing, or whatever,
Hmm.
or that person you hurt, or that person that you helped, whatever. We can see karma works somehow, some way. That is determined by something greater than the individual, in my opinion, my work. And that is what makes morality actually objective and not just subject to preference. Of course, some language around it gets a little hard to deal with, right? It's hard to say to somebody without sounding like you're trying to put your beliefs in their head what
Hmm.
is objective about morality. But we can tell that there is a real such thing as a karmic response to choices, right? Collective choices as a society, as well as individual choices, and that the resonance is consistent. Just
Hmm.
like if I drop something, that's consistent. It's going to fall. There's nothing I can think, say, or enact that will make gravity, or whatever we call gravity, shut off and
Hmm.
give me a break for a second. Right? If I'm 4 years old and I accidentally trip and fall off the cliff, gravity's not going to be like, "Oh, he's an innocent 4 year old. I'll let that slide." You know.
Yeah.
so so that's deterministic. So there's karma, which is like determinism, and then there's free will, which in the now you can take any action, including reflecting and repenting, maybe, and growing, shadow work, whatever. You can take actions in the now, and you're free to do whatever you're able to do, but you're not free to avoid the consequences of your actions. And that's what makes morality objective and outside of just personal preference for me. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah, I think you made a lot of really great points there. And I love how you brought up, natural law and nature. The critical difference, I think, in my opinion, between, nature and natural law versus the human experience is that when it comes to nature and natural law, no matter where you are on the earth, right, you can observe nature and it follows the exact same rules every single place, everywhere. Just watch the animals, watch the water, watch the wind, watch the way they interact with each other. And again, no matter where you are in the world, it's the same pattern. The difference between humans and the animal kingdom, especially, is that the animals are programmed by instinct. They
Right.
have their predetermined code. When they're hungry, they hunt, they eat. When they're tired, they sleep. You know, it's very programmed, and it's consistent. Like you said, you can drop that phone over and over and over. It's going to do the same thing, no matter how much you will it to float. It's going to do the same thing. In the human experience, it's far more complex and it's far more nuanced because, again, that term that you brought up is free will. Humans, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, we have the ability to reason. We have the ability to make choices. We have the gift of logic or the curse of logic, again, depending on which side of the fence that you stand on.
It's a gift
So,
on this channel. Yeah.
right, yeah, and absolutely. It's a superpower that we have. I mean, you could observe the animal kingdom all day long, and you're definitely not going to see two bears in a philosophical debate. Um,
Yeah, no.
so, and that's the
Maybe
thing
two
that,
house cats.
right? Yes, cat fight for sure. But as far as the human experience is concerned, when you move across, different parts of the earth, you see vast differences in culture, language, tradition. There are so many different variables that we have as part of our human experience that absolutely complicate things. And that's where you find all of these differences in thought, rationale, opinion, reason, logic, all of these things. It's so different based on, where you are geographically, I think. As an example, a lot of people like to use religion as kind of like a core argument to this because,
Hmm.
as especially for me, like as a white person born, here in the United States, it's highly likely that with regard to religion that I would have grown up, Christian or
Hmm.
Catholic or some form of,
Right.
but if I was born in China and I was Chinese, it's very possible that I would be Buddhist, you know, or if I was born in the Middle East, I would probably be either Jewish or Islamic,
Muslim.
one of the two. Yeah, absolutely. So you have all of these things with the human experience that make a huge difference with regard to that, but in nature, you don't have that. And
Right.
it's amazing that more people are not taught about natural law because it's such a constant. It is such a reliable source of all of this stuff. Is you can observe it anywhere on earth and it follows the exact same laws no matter where you are.
Right. And my argument or premise here is that the laws that govern the consequences to the moral weight of our
Hmm.
choices are just as consistent, just as constant, if you will, and just as universal. By the way, if we could actually travel to other worlds bearing life,
Hmm.
intelligent life, on our level or greater,
Right.
I I would be very, very, very surprised if we got there and there was a different set of morals that the universe was reacting to, and like if it was somehow different. But then every other thing, thermodynamics and electromagnetism, every other physical law and natural law is the same, and then
Hmm.
morality is just different on this world. Like no, it's
Right. They might have different words for it and speak a different language, but I think the actual concepts themselves would be very much the same.
absolutely, and the
Yeah.
overlap in the faith systems is always in the moral category,
Hmm.
right? Nobody cares about the overlap unless you're a historian, because you're just passionate about this stuff as a historian. But nobody really cares who's like seeking truth and seeking to live a good life through religion about the overlap of names and dates, right?
Hmm.
We care about the overlap of this principle aligns with truth that I experience in my real life just as a human being, and it aligns with truth in Islam, and it aligns with truth in Christianity, it aligns with truth in Buddhism, it aligns with truth in Hinduism, whatever. It aligns with how we should treat each other to bring about our shared objective of more freedom and less coercion in the world so effortlessly that it must be true beyond the religion itself. It must be true beyond the text, the scriptural text itself.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, like you mentioned in one of your videos, it's
mhm,
not so much about the names and the dates. It's more about the concepts, the themes, the archetypes. Those things are absolutely a through line. No matter how far back in history you go, those things are absolutely consistent. But the
right.
names change, the dates change, all of that is different. But the themes and the concepts and the archetypes, those are absolutely consistent throughout the whole story.
One sec. My wife said for me to turn my mic up, and I'm just now noticing that they've been in this room messing with my stuff because my box isn't sitting right here. So hold on one second.
You're good. You're good.
I got a 2.5 year old and a wife. They always be messing with my
Oh,
stuff.
you're blessed, my friend. You are blessed.
Over 10 years, or about 10 years married too.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you,
Hmm.
brother. I appreciate that. Stick on a little bit after the live stream ends. You get to meet him.
For sure.
So boom. My next question for you, and this kind of ties into our theme here very well. I wanted to pull up our
Mm.
thumbnail just so we have an image to look at.
Yeah.
In this image, we have a burning skyline. We have military actions, kind of in the middle. We have a picture of the Capitol, and on the
Hmm.
bottom, we have a lot of symbolism representing the dark occult sorcerer class, right? The
Hmm.
priest class of the manipulators of humankind. And I say, when fires are burning everywhere, it's hard to see the source. What I mean by this is if we have the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk investigation, assassination, if we have the um, Ep- Einstein files release, I'm trying to be careful for YouTube. If
I
we
feel
have
that.
the all of these fires going to data centers, if we have all of these fires going off all at once, all the time, right? In fact, rewind a couple years back, it was LGBT in schools and all these, different things. Kamala Harris thinks she's black when she's Indian, whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
If we have all of these fires going on all the time, it gets extremely hard to actually attack the root of the issue or even
Hmm.
recognize the root of the issue. It gets extremely hard to discern from where the originated and bring remedy or water to the actual root of the problem.
Hmm.
And I wanted to ask you what some of your thoughts are, and you can kind of unfold with this question because I know it's a big question on what the root of the problem is. Because I know my answer, right? My audience may know my answer a little bit, but what do you think is kind of the root of the issues that look like fire over here, fire over there, fire over there, but really it's just one big fire that has a root. What's the root in your eyes?
Right. Well, I think the core theme for it is definitely divide and conquer, right? As far as like pinpointing the exact source of it all, for a lot of people, I think they're looking for, a name, a
Mm,
face, a concrete identity that they can actually point at and say, this is the absolute person or the mythical family or whatever to blame for exactly all of the problems that we see. Um, and the fact that we have so many fires burning in so many different areas is absolutely not an accident. That is 100% on purpose. By
absolutely.
starting so many fires and hitting us with so many different, talking points. You see it on the news every day. I mean, there's something new going on every single day that's got, some new topic for people to argue about. That's absolutely on purpose because when you keep the attention of the general public focused in so many different directions, especially when it's this way or that way, the main direction that they're preventing us from looking is up, you know.
Right.
And I think that we're living in a very interesting time because we're seeing more and more people wake up to the fact that it's top versus bottom. But we also still see far too much of this whole left versus right debate.
Mm-hmm.
It's me against my neighbor, regardless of what you're arguing about. It could be your differences in religion, it could be your differences in your political views, it could be your differences in I like Mexican food versus Italian food. I mean, people are just arguing about something. And the whole point for that, the whole purpose for that, uh, for sure, is to keep us looking sideways and arguing with each other and just preventing us from coming together as a unified body
Right.
uh, to to finally, fight the source of all of those fires. As far as what that source is, I mean,
Yeah.
again, that's really hard to pinpoint. A lot of people think it's the government that's the source. I see a lot of people that have landed on the 13 families. They're the problem
Mm-hmm.
behind all of this.
I think it's
Or,
more than 13 now. I do think it was probably around 13,
mhm.
total around like 1900, 1850 or so, but I think it's probably more than 13 families nowadays. That's just speculation. I'm sorry to interrupt you though, but
No,
yeah.
you're good. And I would agree.
Mhm.
I think I made a pretty comprehensive video on this. The thing about it is, like, again, everybody who understands that while this is very much good versus evil, they're looking for a particular villain. And in the modern age, especially with, the age of information, having a computer in your pocket and access to the internet all the time, the network that it requires to create this machine, I think, is absolutely massive. And it very well could be more than just the 13 families. That very well could have been the core of it. But I think
Right.
now in the world that we live in, it's probably expanded far beyond that.
Right.
Look at, what happened with Einstein. I
Mhm.
mean, I think more people are kind of coming to the general consensus that, yeah, he absolutely was an agent who worked for either the I country or Mossad or whatever. But when you look at just that and you start connecting the lines between the nodes in all of the different facets and whatnot, it becomes far more clear that this is a worldwide network. And so trying to pinpoint a source again is so difficult because, sure, we may be focusing on that one particular name right now, Einstein,
Mhm.
but he's not the only one.
Well, who gave him his start?
Right.
What if he's a super billionaire and he's got, personal travel arrangements and he has all of these companies that he can use their profits for whatever he wants to use them for because he has insane level of power of attorney over figures over people that had a lot of money, right, lots of billions
Hmm.
of dollars to share with Mr. Jeffrey. Then who was he connected to even before we get the who got to the kids, like, yes, we need to get there, that needs to be answered, but before we get there, how his power actually exercised.
Hmm.
That's the answer that we need, that won't ever get shared by those in his network who are still alive and still in office wearing suits in fancy offices, right? um and
Yeah.
my answer, oops, I didn't mean to remove that. My answer to what's the root is the religion of monetary value. And I do want to tell you what I think and then kind of get your general response to my
Hmm.
thoughts here. So, I define the religion of monetary value as the religion that postulates that monetary value is real and that money is a legitimate gatekeeper to access to resources. That basically this game of accounting and balancing the books, playing credit and debt, um, this game is completely unreal. It operates always and from its inception, from its original space, under coercion, under threat of violence,
Hmm.
and has never been separate from taxation, meaning the forceful removal of the fruits of one's individual or group labor for the benefit of an organization that's taking it without consent. Um, all of these things from ancient Sumer, the first modern civilization, about 5 to 15,000 years old, that we can, that's the party line, is that it's about 5,000 years, maybe 15,000 years or so, depending on who you're talking to.
Hmm.
This is the first one that had a banking system, and they had, not only was their money based on debt and credit like ours is, meaning fiat currency, like not real, just jotted down bills of exchange, bills of lading, and all of these ways to make the books and then balance the books, but with taxation that unbalances the books in favor of the centralized enforcement arm, and then feeds them all of the fruits of the labor of the people that are the actual currency. Sorry to deviate, but I have to get that out, so people understand where I'm coming from here. That religion, that belief system, is, in my opinion, the root of the because it almost necessitates that our children are lied to about how the world works, because it
Mhm.
necessitates people being financially illiterate and needing to depend on these sorcerers to navigate the financial system that they were born into. It necessitates an enforcement arm, because without an enforcement arm, you don't really get to maintain widespread mind control that's literally tied to your survival, right? If you don't have enough money, you can't buy water, right?
Right. Hmm.
Um, that all of the separate, divide and conquer, separate them and rule over them tactics are on the foundation of the belief system that money is a legitimate gatekeeper to access to resources. When in
Hmm.
fact, of course, if the books are not balanced, meaning if there's a debt, an obligation that goes unpaid forever, right? It never gets paid. The resources, the people, the potential labor, the trees, plants, whatever, the fruit, the lumber, the metal, all of those things don't disappear. Nothing happens to them. Nothing happens to our creative capacity. We don't have less creative capacity to invent and to solve problems just because the books didn't get balanced. What actually happened was a pretend game didn't work out the way that a group of people wanted it to work out, and therefore they used their enforcement arm to cause, death or injury, or a lack or a stripping of freedom, because they say, and that's how the books got balanced. So now you sit in jail for 30 days, for 2 years, whatever, and that pays your debt.
Hmm.
Now the books are balanced because we put your real body in a real cage for this fictional, unit to move from one ledger to another ledger.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion. My opinion, the root of all of these, social and economic and political issues and divide and conquer tactics is the religion of monetary value. What do you kind of think in response to that?
I agree completely. And you had sent me that episode from your YouTube channel, and I watched the whole thing, and I think you are absolutely spot on every single one of those points. And this is really one of those topics where you could spend probably years discussing it, because there's so many different directions and things about it that you can discuss. And
Yeah.
it's one of those topics. I love having this discussion with people who claim to um, be masters of or be well educated in, like, economic theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your accountants, your people who deal with like taxes and things like that, because they're very good at regurgitating the information that they've learned about the economy and the way that money works, and how you balance a checkbook, and how you perform investments and things like that, which is all fine and dandy. That's great. But what frustrates me about what they fail to understand is that at the very foundational level, like quite literally the very first cornerstone of that entire structure, is that the entire monetary system is completely made up.
Yep.
It came out of somebody's head.
Yep.
It's totally imaginary. It is not a natural resource. It is not a universal law. Nature doesn't follow it. Look at any animal on the earth. They don't pay money to survive, and they do just fine. People like to throw around this term, the cost of living, which for me personally is one of the most hilarious phrases in all of human existence.
Oh, that's some word magic right there, baby. Oh yeah.
Right. The cost of living. Like, what do you mean? I didn't ask to be born here. I didn't choose this. So what do you mean that I have to buy the resources? I have to have water, and I have to have food for my body to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean that that's something that I have to pay for, and it's something that has value? And if you take the argument and the discussion back far enough, you eventually get to the point, the subject of like land and water and resources,
Yep.
it's, themselves. And these are all things that existed long before humanity ever touched this planet
In complete abundance.
in complete abundance. If you take the human factor out of uh, the ecosystem, guess what? The earth is going to earth. It's going to do what it does. Like
It's gonna make the water. It's gonna make and replenish the oil. It's going to make the tree. It's going to tree and rock and volcanic. Explosion reaction, whatever, and then whatever resources come
exactly.
from that. It's gonna make the coal. It's gonna make the crystals.
Hmm.
It's going to make the gold. Even if, although of course we acknowledge there's no such thing as monetary value in gold.
Right.
It makes that right. The earth will give all day, all night. That's what the earth does. And we do. We as earthlings, we give all day and all night, but we don't realize that we give real things and we pretend they're tied to this fictional process of transactions and balancing the books.
Yeah. And we've built our entire identities around that. People like to make the argument that this is just the way things are and this is the way that it's always been. Well, sure, it's the way that things are, but for one critical reason, and that's because we allow it.
Mm,
The only thing that props up the value of money is collective belief. It's nothing but vibes is pretty
right.
much all it is when it comes to
Right.
monetary value. And I think the ultimate question behind all of it is, what human anywhere has any right whatsoever to put any resource behind a paywall for anybody else? You know, who has the right to draw a line in the sand and tell another human being, if you want access to everything behind this line, you have to pay for it? It's
And and
absolutely ridiculous.
and does an apple actually have the same value to a hungry person and a fed person?
Hmm.
Someone who's well fed, right there at that moment, they're well fed. Does the apple have the same value? Then why is it $3.99 for both people?
Right.
Right? And like you said, we could. There's so many branches to this concept, this central kind of point of the religion of monetary value.
Yeah.
And that's
How
why,
how
yeah.
important is gold between a farmer and a person who makes a Rolex watch? How important is gold to the guy who raises chickens? He doesn't give a squat about gold. Sure, the
Right.
Rolex watch guy might care about it, but
Right.
and that's another kind of funny thing about these people who are constantly, saying, "Oh, we need to bring back the gold back dollar." What do you mean? Gold is just a shiny rock. Again, it's the religion of monetary value. It conducts electricity really well. It's useful to somebody who makes things using gold as a material, but other than that, it holds no value whatsoever.
Right. Right. It might help your body heal from something, but it just does not have this thing called monetary or economic or financial value. Oh, and I wanted to add a word to what you said, not as a correction, but as an addition.
Hmm.
Um, uh, fuck. Oh man, it popped in my head, and then I went to say not a correction, and it popped back out. Um, it'll come back.
Hmm.
It's not only collective belief; it's also collective obedience,
Yes.
because the other part that people don't want to acknowledge when we get into conversations, especially like you said, with economists, with accountants, with money masters, people that investment masters, all of these things,
Hmm.
and people who mean well, by the way, who they spent a significant amount of their time mastering this game, but they also don't necessarily have evil intentions for the world, right?
Right.
Um, uh, they they remain obedient to a system that will beat them to death if they don't.
Hmm.
And we're not collectively choosing death over obedience to these people. And um and we don't have to choose. We can choose to see what happens and just kind of live our lives, and or we can choose to, I'm not inciting violence, but we can choose to fight them.
Hmm.
Or we can choose, like I said, we can choose imprisonment, we can choose death and say, no, I will no longer continue to play your balance the books game. If my brother is in need and I can provide the need, provide the help, then I'm going to do that, and I'm not going to require a transaction,
Hmm.
right? And like you said in one of your recent videos, I'm not going to beg the government to come and help me deal with some every now and again dealing with a bully of some kind, dealing with a shisty person of some kind, dealing with a liar of some kind. I'm not going to be like, "Oh, government, they're here lying again. Can we
Hmm.
please lock them up for their speech? Can we please um handle this? Something needs
Right.
to be done about this, you know.
Right.
Uh please daddy government, please. Mommy money, mommy bank, daddy government."
Exactly. Protect me and keep my family safe and dictate my morality for me because I can't do it myself. Yeah. Complete
Yeah,
and total abdication of critical thinking, sovereignty, autonomy, becoming dependent on those external systems. It makes us weak. It makes us lazy. It makes us scared
right.
to be able to handle our own business. And one of the things I love that you had brought up in again that those videos that you had sent me
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole
is
religion of monetary value series. I think that we're on part 6 or part
yeah,
7 next time I make one. Yeah.
yeah, and you had sent me part 3. Um, well, now I'm having one of those brain moments.
Sorry, man. I'm sorry. I ain't mean to do that to you. It'll come back. I'm gonna give you a second.
It'll come back, but it's on the topic of obedience. I think one of the things that kind of keeps people in this never-ending cycle and prevents them from stepping outside is fear. We're afraid of the unknown because this is all we have known. The vast majority of us, I think, were basically born in a room, and we were told that the room is the whole house, and that there's not a world outside of the house in general, right? And none of us really questions that. We're afraid to even open the door. And for a lot of people who kind of push back against people like you and like me who talk about true freedom and autonomy and especially anarchy, they kind of ask the question, well, what's the answer? What's the plan? And I came up with, I think, a pretty good analogy to get people to at least kind of think about this. Just kind of imagine yourself walking down the street and a stranger walks up to you and puts their hands around your neck, right? The question then is, before you remove their hands from around your neck, are you going to sit there and plan out the rest of your afternoon? Or are you at least going to make the decision to take their hands off your neck so you can breathe before you move on to the next step? When it comes to unraveling a world that is as entangled as it is, there really is not a clean exit strategy. There is not a singular option for this because they're attacking us from so many fronts. We have to respond in kind. Um, and so, where people, I think, kind of get hung up is, well, we have to have a plan. We have to organize. We have to have this. No, we don't. But what we do at least have to do is make sure that we take the first step and give ourselves the freedom to
Oh, you
breathe.
froze a little bit.
Oh, you're good. Can you hear me now?
You good? Yep.
Okay.
Everything's good. You back on?
Yeah. So we at least have to start by making that first step and giving ourselves the room and the freedom to breathe. And then we can start kind of working on the plan and the details later. We can all
Right.
kind of agree on the fact that we're suffocating right now.
Right. We need
What our
air right now.
we need air right now. At least give yourself the chance to breathe, and then we can work on the 50-year plan a little bit later on down the road. But for now, let's at least take the first step. And I think that first step, you mentioned the word obedience. Well, what's
Hmm.
the answer to that is collective disobedience. Stop paying your taxes.
Or just collective
Stop,
freedom. But yeah.
yeah,
Go
or
ahead.
collective
Yeah.
freedom. Yeah, stop paying your taxes. Because the thing about taxes is that I think a lot of people confuse the IRS for some like collection plate that they're waiting on, and you put your taxes in there, and then the rest of the government says, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this. That's not how that works. Your taxes exist for one reason and one reason only, and it's to force you to earn the dollar. That's it. It doesn't
That's it.
fund anything. So your taxpayer dollars go nowhere at all. If the government wants to fund a war, They don't need your little $100 tax return to do it. They have free and
They print
unlimited
money.
access. Yeah. They're
They
the
print
money
money.
machine. They're the money
And they do it
machine.
in two ways. They print paper money and they make what they call treasury securities. I mean, they make the money
Yeah.
comes out of thin air.
Yep. When you go into a bank to get a loan for a car or a mortgage, they don't go into a vault and like take out the cash and say, okay, here you go. Now you have to pay this back with interest. It's literally a keystroke. The money that exists for your loan literally did not exist until you put your signature on that paper, and then boom, there's ones and zeros in an account that you have to pay back. So not only are they making the profit off of the interest, but the entire loan is profit because it was created out of nothing. And nobody gets that. That's called fractional reserve banking.
Exactly.
That's
Yep.
literally how the whole system works.
And it's just called a credit debt system because
Yeah.
all the credit debt systems, even beyond our beloved Federal Reserve here in the States, work the same way.
Yeah. Yep.
Work the same way. And interest is ungodly. I mean, I'm not gonna have a full economic breakdown with you right now in this episode because we're getting
Yeah.
towards my hour cutoff.
We
But
could go on that forever.
oh my god! But interest is the devil.
Yeah.
So okay. First of all, I have to acknowledge you brought up something that reminded me of Plato's allegory of the cave, where people do not exercise imagination. Where
Hmm.
for some reason the stories that we are told in our room, you said we're born in a room and we're told that this room is the whole world.
Yep.
Um, and when we buy those stories, hook, line, and sinker, and then we are introduced to an idea that may shatter our beliefs around those stories, we fight the person introducing the conflicting information. Why do we do that? In my work, in my opinion, it's because of the inner storyteller. Now, the inner storyteller is not an evil presence in my work. It's not some sort of malfunction in the brain. The inner
Hmm.
storyteller is a part of consciousness itself. Okay, animals have an inner storyteller, plants have an inner storyteller, and human beings, individually and collectively, we can see the inner storyteller at work by observing human beings in nature or human beings over time.
Hmm.
I just don't want people to confuse in nature with like outside. Like no, it's human beings. Period. um,
Right.
Here on this channel, we examine a concept called the inner storyteller, and the basic premise is that the world, as it's experienced by any being, especially human beings, is experienced in story form. Right? An event or a sequence of events happens, and we generate meaning from that sequence. How it happened, when it happened, and what it was like for the experiencer for it to happen or for those things to
Hmm.
happen. Our inner experience operates through symbol systems, and symbols do not work unless they carry stories. The story can be short, right? The letter A is a symbol, and it means a few things. It means it means a, and it serves its functions in a sentence,
Hmm.
right? But regardless, that's the story that it carries. This is the sound or this is the sound a, or the blah blah blah. That's a story. The sorting function, something we talk about on this channel often, that you definitely heard in episode 3 of the Religion of Monetary Value, is the function that does associations. So this event that happens means this for human beings, or means this for my life, or this means this for strawberry ice cream. Whatever it is, that association, I call that that happening. I call that the work of the story function. Excuse me, the sorting function.
Hmm.
Sorting function. So the sorting function of the inner storyteller files incoming information into various categories before conscious examination can occur.
Hmm.
So it happens too fast for us to like watch that happen and decide the best category. We don't, it's a subconscious mind thing. It happens too fast.
Yeah.
And this means most of what people call their options or their opinions or their values, even what we call our reactions, were installed before we had the tools to evaluate what was being programmed within our mind. Given everything that we've already discussed today, the relationship between moral integrity and freedom, the disruption of moral development through various institutions and divide and conquer tactics. What do you think, Auren, people can actually do with a proper understanding of consciousness or of the inner storyteller and like how it works?
Yeah, well, and especially with regard to what you had just brought up with the cave, right? I think another word that I think people can maybe relate to that might help them kind of imagine that inner storyteller, your ego. And when you ask the question, why do so many people kind of resist any type of outside information that comes in and maybe contradicts what you have grown to believe on a particular topic, subject matter, whatever? A lot of people, I think, just don't want to admit that there's a possibility that what you learn might be wrong. And
Right.
the entire act of considering what you think you know could potentially be the wrong version of something is a deeply uncomfortable experience. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people want to avoid. Everybody wants to be right. We see that so much in the world today. Everybody wants to be right. So, kind of segue that into, this question here that you've just asked. I think one thing that people could do to kind of like help facilitate, the healing of all of humanity as a whole really is to let go of the ego and stop holding on so tightly to the story that you've been told and start experiencing your own version of the story. Open your mind and allow yourself to exercise your imagination. This world that we live in, sure, it is what it is and it's what we're used to, but it only exists because this is what we've allowed to be built. But we have the ability to manifest a completely different version. A lot of people talk about the matrix and the world is an illusion and all of these different, spiritual concepts. What does that really mean? Well, that means that we have the ability through our choices and our actions to build something completely different. The resources of this earth don't have to be stuck behind a paywall. We could start with the younger generations and train them to adopt a gifting economy. You had mentioned that in your religion of monetary value video.
Yep.
And oh my gosh, I love the idea of a gifting economy because the difference between that and bartering is that in a gifting economy, a transaction can actually be one direction. There doesn't have to be a reciprocal exchange, which I think is where people who kind of like argue against bartering get hung up, because in a barter economy, convenience or efficiency kind of becomes the issue, right? If
Yes.
I need clothes and I'm looking to trade chickens for clothing, I have to, one, find somebody who makes
Is
clothing,
in
and
need of
two,
chickens.
is
Yeah.
in need of chickens.
Yeah.
But in a gifting economy, the transaction is taken out of the equation and it
Yep.
becomes more about, look, the village, the collective, the group needs this for survival. So the guy who raises chickens for the sake of raising the chickens, because we use them for whatever, their feathers to make quills, their meat to provide sustenance, whatever. But there's no transaction built into that.
Right.
The guy who builds shelters for the sake of, we need shelter. We need it in the winter to stay warm. We need it in the summer to stay cool. But it's not transactional.
Right.
And we build these things and we grow these things and we do these things out of necessity,
Yeah.
not for personal gain.
And we're not going to suddenly stop doing what's necessary because now
Mm-hmm.
we don't have a transaction structure and an enforcement arm tied to that transaction structure anymore. That it's we're not just gonna not want to eat good food. We're not just gonna not want
Mm-hmm.
to make people smile with our talents and or our whatever we're providing at work right now. We're not going
Mm-hmm.
to desire to see everybody suffer and watch ourselves deteriorate just because we're no longer transacting with this fake money monetary value game. And I
Exactly.
and I always will return to it's a game. It's a game that we are choosing to play and choosing to be obedient to that we do not have to. We can put down the game. We can put it back in the box, put it back on the shelf whenever we want to. Forgiving all debt whatsoever is a
Hmm.
necessary step towards the human family becoming more free.
It's
Forgive
quite
all of the
literally the
debt.
reason why the game of Monopoly was invented.
Sorry, it's quite literally the reason the game of Monopoly. What? One more time.
It's quite literally the reason that the game of Monopoly was invented. Was
Was
to
invent.
teach this
Yes.
was to teach this concept right here. We're living the
Yeah.
real life version of Monopoly.
And you brought up the gifting economy. The truth is, my brother and audience, that's all that we've ever had is a
Hmm.
gifting economy. We always have only had sharing and working for yourselves and others. That's all we've ever really done as far as
Yep.
what nature is recording in nature's memory. Because nature doesn't recognize transactions and accounting and balancing the books
Hmm.
and arbitrary 3.99 for an apple whether you're hungry or not, even though it has completely different value for it's worth billions of dollars if you're starving to death,
Right.
right? Just saying. Um we have shared objectives as a human family of more freedom, less coercion, more health, less disease, more love, and less hate, to name a few. And to get there, in my opinion, we have to target the religion of monetary value, and to what something that you said earlier, Auren, we have to get the children to know the truth about these things before we
Hmm.
introduce them to how the world works at large right now, so that their foundation is better than ours was. Um,
Exactly.
I want to give a big, big, big thanks for you coming on the show. Thank you so very, very, very much, good sir. I do hope you want to come back and either continue or have some more conversations um on my show. You know what I'm saying?
Bro, anytime. Yeah, I'll come back
Awesome.
anytime you want.
This was great. I think people are gonna get a lot from this. My wife says giving with no strings attached at the end, and literally, and we need it decentralized and community driven. Absolutely.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. And totally voluntary. No coercion, no threats of punishment.
right. Please tell the people your TikTok channel, and anything else that you might want them to check out, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. My TikTok channel, just like in the name there, Dragon na Fierine, which is Gaelic for Dragon of Truth. And on my TikTok channel, I go through all this stuff. I have videos on there about religion, about geopolitics, about money, one of my favorite topics. For me personally, there's really no subject that's off limits, and my goal with my content is to try to get people to zoom out
Yeah.
far enough to kind of see the big picture, because everybody right now kind of has this tunnel vision, right? And we're all focused on one particular part of the problem, which is great. We have all these great causes behind all of these different things. But until you zoom out far enough and see the big picture, you really don't have an understanding of what's going on. And so that's kind of been my goal with my TikTok content. And a lot of it is very blunt. I do use a lot of
It
harsh
is.
language, but I'm not out there to protect anybody's feelings, because just like the truth, it doesn't care about your feelings. The truth is the truth, regardless,
Right.
whether you like it or not, believe it or not, whatever. And for me, the truth is number one. That's my goal.
Yeah, shout out Ben Shapiro. Facts don't care about your feelings. Nah,
Right.
yeah, man. Thank you so very much. You see, Big Sis left a comment. She's getting ready to go back and watch the replay. Please like the video, Big Sis, while you're here. Okay, like the
Hmm.
video, everybody. It does help me, get one day. I do have aspirations to one day monetize this podcast, but I don't care if that ever happens. I'm gonna be here regardless, spreading and sharing how I always do. Thank you very, very much for rocking out with us. Of course, as you already know, the question that we always return to on this channel is, what story are you willing to live? Please let us know in the comments, and we will see you. What's today? Friday. We'll see you tomorrow in the next episode. Peace and love
Thank,
always.